I started Tessolve. Actually, I wanted to start it as a manufacturing company.
Okay.
Believe it or not, right? I had a manufacturing plan. I had an OSAT plan, 2003. But of course, right, I couldn't get any funding and so on. There are going to be three distinct supply chain that's evolving. One is the American supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is the Chinese supply chain and the rest of the world, right? So it's no more that optimized thing that we used to know, right? Global supply chain or something was probably the most optimized supply chain, right? So now it's going to be, pretty much three different supply chains independent of each other. And I think the rest of the world's supply chain is where I think India is going to take a lead. I'm a big believer in distributed everything.
Yeah.
And so this mega scaling and, creating this, whether it's a fab and all those things, I think eventually I'm a big believer that, it'll become more community-based, smaller, regional, according to the needs of it and the and what the people there can do and so on. So I think there is going to be a lot more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of smaller companies that look at India as a more trustworthy partner in this, because we've always been very neutral.
Hi, welcome to Chai and Chips. This is Prakash Malya. Today we have with us Raja Manickam. Raja frankly does not need any introduction because he has contributed so much to the Indian semiconductor and the global semiconductor industry for a very long period of time. He founded Tessolve in 2003 in India. It was headquartered and continues to be headquartered in Bangalore. And it passed 1,000 crore revenue recently, making it one of the biggest in India in test and design services and one of the successful companies in semiconductor solutions. He didn't stop there. He founded at the age of, believe you me, 68 in 2024, IVP Semi, which is focused on building semiconductor products, reducing the development or design lifecycle, as well as increasing the strategic autonomy for the country. So he is one person who has seen the entire spectrum of the semiconductor industry for over a couple of decades and has contributed significantly to it. So, Raja, welcome to Chai and Chips. You are an inspiration and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Prakash. It's a pleasure. And I, like you said, right, age is, I don't really bother with so much about it because you enjoy what you do.
That's so good.
And, semiconductor is like a drug, right? Once you get on this drug, you can't get out of it. So it's a good drug to have.
Yes. I can vouch for it.
Yes.
Having spent time in the industry, it is a cool industry to be in.
Yeah,
it's true. So you started your career with multinational like Texas,
yes,
National Semi. You've done startups after that. You've founded startups. At what point in time did it really strike you to build semiconductor or contribute to the semiconductor ecosystem in India?
I mean, one was, I always wanted to come back to India, right? That pull for me was very strong. But like most people, right, you go to the US, you stuck there, and then you wait for the kids to go to college, and then you make a move, right? So I wasn't any different. But if I had not made the move, right, at that point, I would have been stuck, right? It's like you got to get off that super highway, if you may, right? So I always wanted to come to India. My wife is also from India, and so and she's very passionate about it. She does a lot of things on the education side.
Okay.
So as a couple, right, it always has to be a couple. If one, if the other doesn't like it, it doesn't happen. So I think both of us were very, wanting to come back to India, do a lot of things in India. The other thing was especially semiconductor. Most of the Indian diaspora are designers and so on, right? So there's, in the Western side. But fortunately for me, I started as in the manufacturing in a factory in TI in Singapore. That was my first job. So I worked my way up from from the bottom of semiconductor segment in the manufacturing and move all the way up, right? So I was very comfortable with, Asia and factories and all those kind of things. And I felt that India lost out, right? Because I worked in Malaysia, I worked in Singapore. I actually worked in the factories, right? I'm not just visiting factories.
Yeah.
And I saw that, we have so much talent, so much people and, smart people and so forth. But yet, we couldn't pull the manufacturing. I'm talking about the 90s, right?
Right. Right.
So I thought we missed the boat. So I was always trying to figure out, how you bring this back. And 2004, in fact, before I started Tessolve, actually, I wanted to start it as a manufacturing company.
Okay.
Believe it or not, right? I had a manufacturing plan. I had an OSAT plan, 2003. But of course, right, I couldn't get any funding and so on. And everybody said, hey, there's a service industry. Maybe you want to try. And I mean, I couldn't get for that either from a funding standpoint, but at least it was a proven model in India.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up starting, But the pull to come to India, the caliber, because I also worked with a lot of, part of my national semiconductor, I was with, on telecom.
Okay.
So I used to run the telecom P&L. So I actually visited CDOT many times those days in the mid-90s, 93, 94, 95 timeframe. I worked with a lot of young engineers in Bangalore and Delhi. And I said, man, these guys are so smart, right? But yet, we didn't get a place at the table.
Right.
So all of this put together, it's like, hey, I got to do this.
Yeah. Fantastic. So you started as manufacturing, pivoted to design services because you couldn't get funding. And now you are into productization with IVP Semi. What made you change, or what drove the mindset shift saying now is the timing to go into products versus doing services?
I think, I think there's always services business will be there, and I think it's going to grow, right? That's all. I think last year they did about 1,300 or 1,400 crore. Right. And I think lately you saw, TPG picked up 25% stake for, I think, $550 million enterprise value, right?
Right.
So I think that business will grow. Mm-hmm. But my view is, hey, the timing is good. There are going to be three distinct supply chain that's evolving. One is the American supply chain. Mm-hmm. Another one is the Chinese supply chain, and the rest of the world, right? So it's no more that optimized thing that we used to know, right? Global supply chain for semi was probably the most optimized supply chain, right? So now it's going to be, pretty much three different supply chains independent of each other. And I think the rest of the world supply chain is where I think India is going to take a lead, right? We're a big nation. We have a big market. And the timing is good now with all the geopolitical issues and all that. And, I think the government, central government, Prime Minister came 2 days for the Semiconductor show and all that, right? So the intent, the making a statement, right? So all of that put together, right? I believe that, we need to be a product nation because there's an opportunity to build products that will fulfill this supply chain. So, and then the other thing is, government has put a lot of money, since last February into manufacturing, right? The fab coming up with Tata, the OSATs and all that. Who's going to fill up all this, right? Where is the demand going to come from, right? And so we are going to be the demand creators for it, right? In fact, I work with the central government on this. So there's going to be a lot more money going into demand creation. Mm-hmm. And demand creation is products, right?
Yeah.
Then the question is which products, right? And so I think, you peel the onion and you get to where it is. All said and done, right? Product is a lot more fun, right? I used to have a slide to show where is the money in the semiconductor, right? Is it in the fab, in the OSAT, or is it in EDA tools, or is it in equipment, where it is, right?
Yeah.
And the product guys pick up everything. They don't own anything, right? But, they make the most amount of money, right? Correct. So the product guys figure out how to make use of all of this without owning anything, right? And making the most amount of money, right? Yeah. So we're smart people, okay? We do it in other countries, sure, right? So I think, product is, one is, I think we need it. Secondly, I think, it's the right thing to do from a business standpoint as well. Mm-hmm. The final thing is more from a socialist angle. I'm kind of a socialist person. Is that the Western solution is an expensive solution. It has to be an expensive solution, right? One is because, they want to make those big margins and so forth. Second thing is it's solutions for the Western requirements, right? One example I always give is this driverless cars and all that, right? That's a very key thing for all the Western countries, right? Cool. because they don't have drivers. I already have a driverless car. I don't drive my car, right? Somebody else drives my car. He parks it. I call him. It's there. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, I can trust him more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
About 20,000, 30,000 rupees, I have a driverless car, right? So that's not our issue,
right?
Whereas if I go to every service company, in this space in India, they will say, I have IP for driverless cars or something like that. So we're working on the wrong solution, in my opinion, right? So I think there is a set of real problem that we need to solve, whether it's climate warming of water or quality of life or anything. Practical solutions, cost-effective solutions that really needs to be implemented, and that will come from India.
Understand.
By culture, we're frugal in the sense, but we're also very society-minded, community people, right?
Yeah.
So I think, solutions that come from India will be a lot more is what the globe needs in the next 10, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And we're completely different from what the Western thought process is.
That's a comprehensive solution. And we can dig into each of those elements during this conversation, right? The first part of that you mentioned was the kind of breakup of the supply chain, the US supply chain, China supply chain, and rest of world supply chain. It'd be great to get your color on what has driven that breakup.
I think, the elephants are fighting, right? I don't want to mention the name, but so we're caught in between, right? So there's a lot of small nations and all that, right? Do you trust this guy or trust this guy? One guy, from a security reason, another guy from, his own reason. So I think there is a lot of reasons why, the trust level between countries have become eroded, right? It could be protectionism or whatever it is, right? And then security reasons, right? I mean, who would have thought that, in the year 2025, there'll be a war going on, right? And it's just mindless to me. Why would somebody go to war now, right? But I think, so I think that the pivoting of this, right, gives an opportunity where it's not going to, like, people thought that China is going to be the factory of the world, right? I always believe that, after a certain size you become, you start to drop off, right? You cannot keep on becoming a monopoly, right? I mean, today is NVIDIA, right? A few years ago it was Intel.
True.
Right? Intel was so huge in microprocessors that they had to fund AMD to stay them alive, right? So,
yes.
So they don't look like a monopoly, right?
Yes.
So today, the story about Intel, right? So I think, like any other thing, right? So it has to be distributed. I'm a big believer in distributed everything. Right?
Yeah.
And so this mega scaling and, creating this, whether it's a fab and all those things, I think eventually I'm a big believer that, it'll become more community-based, smaller, regional, according to the needs of it and the and what the people there can do and so on. So I think there is going to be a lot more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of smaller companies that look at India as a more trustworthy partner in this, because we've always been very neutral, right?
Yeah.
So I think Indians in general are, I've done business with many different people, are quite trustworthy, right?
Okay.
We don't cover it for other people's IP in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Very little of that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, there's a lot of trust. And apart from China and the US, there's a huge market. I mean, we probably will be the biggest market, right?
Agree.
And EU, I don't think they can stand by themselves. So we have to align with somebody.
Yeah.
With all that's happening, I think they're better off aligning with us than the Western countries.
Yeah. And the other part that was embedded in your earlier response was the talent. And you felt the talent is such high caliber in India. And I completely agree. 20% of the designers of chips have always come from India. But that being said, a large part of them, though they want to go do semiconductors or deep tech, still end up in software. So what is your view on how do we make chip building or semiconductors more aspirational for young people?
Yeah, I think, see, when I started my career, right, from college, right, there was a lot of tinkering going on, right? In the hostels, we used to, guys who's got ham radios, and we used to build stuff like that, right? So there's a lot of tinkering, right? And when the light comes out, right, we're like, oh, how did that happen, right?
Yeah.
So I think the last probably 10, 15 years or maybe 20 years, right, it has gone more to coding and software, and people like, yeah, it works, doing something, but how it works and all that, right? I think the fundamentals were kind of, not that emphasized and so on. So like, I had a meeting with, we're doing something with IIT Madras, right?
Okay.
They've created this kit where, where you can do some basic experiments on, current and power and all that. It's like a kit they've designed. And when I take it to my hometown, my village, and we start with 8th grade, 9th grade.
Right.
They actually, send some sine waves and see some square waves coming out the other side and actually see it, right? So excited. I mean, these are kids, I'm talking about, tier 2, tier 3 small town, right?
Wow.
Small town. And I could see that they become more curious. So I think, one part of it is, we need to create that curiousness in people, right? Rather than just, doing the coding part of it. I still remember the story for when I was in IIT Kharagpur, we had DC, but we didn't have computer science.
Okay.
So I think my third year, computer science was introduced, right?
Oh, okay.
So there was an option for us to switch to computer science, right?
Right.
So half the class actually switched.
Right.
But I went to my prof, right? I said, hey, I'm so curious, I want to do this, right? Because something, you know what he said? He said, Raja, you're a smart guy, okay? You like to, look at electrons and stuff like that, right? Why are you going to these stupid people, they just write something in coding? So, I mean, it was, that was his advice, right? This was not for too smart people.
Yeah.
But of course, the guys who went there, they went and joined Microsoft after graduation. They're all multimillionaires. And I'm still, looking at signals. So it's a different story. But I think, this curiosity needs to get implemented at a very basic level. And by nature, we are curious.
Yeah.
Right? Indians, we are very curious people, right? And we, our parents, grandparents, they all thought of us, all the historic stories and all that. So I think we will get there very quickly. Okay. We just need to do some work at a educational level. And, we'll be a force to beat.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
And switching gears a bit, a large part of any organization, especially startups, is about leadership, right? And what I really wanted to understand from you is your leadership philosophy. So maybe we could start with during your career, the kind of pivotal moment or a failure that you faced early on, which really shaped your thinking on leadership.
Yeah, I think, fortunately I started with TI, right? TI opened up all their, knowledge to us, right? If you're curious, right, sky's the limit,
right?
Even for a young engineer, right?
Right.
Although I started as a test engineer and I was allowed to do spice modeling, right? Which has got nothing to do with tests, right? But it was just after 6 p.m., we had some, really gurus in spice modeling. So we'll sit with them and doing. So they exposed that, right? So I think, exposure, to these kind of things was a very, very good thing. They learned a lot from there, right? What you do outside of your work, right, mattered a lot. And there was no fear, right, at that time, right? But I saw over time, right, the management style started to change. And people, it wasn't about, people were talking about employees, they're, it's a people company, but really, practice it was not, right? The layoffs, happening. I was, very depressed every time, even though I'd never been laid off myself. But I always was, why people get laid off and all that? Usually, a lot of times my boss get laid off. I don't know why. So I felt that, the whole empathy for people, people were not in the equation at all.
Yeah.
Right. Especially the American style, right? And more, right? If you look at all the MBAs that we are minting today, and a lot of them are Indians, right? They become more and more of a spreadsheet, and so there's no value in the sense, in all of this equation, right? What is the people part of it, right? So I think that was something that I said, look, great companies exist because of great people.
No question.
And you can say that, but then how do you make you really are have them work in a mindset where we're all working together to build this, right? If you are like a gun for hire, you come, I need you for this, and then you're done, you're gone, right? So that's a different business model. Maybe it works. Maybe it works for Broadcom.
Yeah.
Right. But for me, right, I came from a school of thought of, right from my young age, right, that you should be inclusive, So I was the first grandson in my family. My grandfather was like, you got to carry my name, and, you got to take care of all these people, might like you, don't like you, but you got to guide them and all that. So I think I had that, the family kind of attitude.
Right.
So my relationship was always like that. And I always felt that in India, especially, the emotional bonding is more important than your objective bonding, if you may, right? In the US, it's like, you meant all these goals, we give you this money, right?
Yeah.
Here, if you're emotionally bonded to them, they will go all out to, do things beyond, what you expect them, right? So I think the management style in India, although I was trained in the US most of my life, I was quite successful in building. I mean, you could talk to people that work for me. And my wife always kids with me. She says, people don't work for you, you work for them.
Which is such a great mindset to have as a leader. Right.
So I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. So I think, that is one of the things that from a failure I saw that, that some of the Western companies were kind of going down. And whereas I felt that, this was something that we need to pivot to go back to the glory, if you may, right? The HP was something like that, right?
Yeah.
The founders of HP, right?
Right. Yeah, such a great thought. And from everything I've read and listened or watched about you, what strikes me the most is your leadership, right? Your style. You come across as very thoughtful. And some of the things that you have implemented, like you treat employees as your family. You have, in Tessolve, hired from small towns, trains them to really be excellent at what they do. As a leader, you have felt making decisions is very important as a leader. And then as a startup, day one itself, running a professional organization, having clear accounting is very important. So these are all not really found all the time. So what shaped your thinking in these aspects on how to think about it, and where do you feel you stand in terms of leadership in startups, and what advice would you have?
So let me go through, the reverse direction, what you said, right? See, running a startup as a corporate, right, with a corporate, compliance and all those things was very important, because I saw a lot of great startups, but because the accounting was not good, or, how they had managed, how they've been moving around people and finance and all that, they couldn't get funding, right? Not because, they had a great product, they had, good stuff, but because it wasn't compliant in some ways, the moment, you approach, any funding, whether it's a VC or a private equity, they look at it and if they see even a little bit of, they're not, happy about in terms of compliance, right, they back off, right? So, you shut yourself off, right? So I think that was one thing very, very important. I said, hey, compliance and all. So it's always a corporate. And fortunately, because I learned from TI.
True.
TI was one of the best companies, to start with for a young engineer. There was a lot of exposure. But at the same time, right, they were very, very compliant on everything, right? They did. So that part of it was, was a very important part. And I know any startup I would recommend, right? Because you tend to say, okay, we'll take care of it when we're bigger and so on. Right? But when you're small, if you lay down these things, right, it's easier to do it.
Yeah.
Right. When you're small, right.
Yeah.
So I was always, compliant, especially on the accounting side and finance side, and so on, right. And then when you bring the people in, right? Again, right? You want to see people that can question you, but at the same time, right? Some alignment with the with the thought process of the founders.
Right.
Right. I think that is also very, very key in
Alignment to the mission.
alignment to the mission more than when a personal thing, right?
Right.
And we ran into a lot of times, right? There, and I always say, any company is a dictatorship, right? And we may all. And I'm very, very open to discussion and all that. In fact, I walk down to every level and get inputs and so on, right? I used to have lunch with everybody, pull them together and make them easy, and ask them some very controversial questions with that, sometimes put them unease in that sense. But then, finally you have to make a call, right?
Yeah, you have to make a decision.
And you have to make a decision, right? Even if only about 30% data, if you may, right? Don't do this data paralysis, right? More data. I'm a very impatient guy in this sense. By the way, I've made a lot of mistakes, okay? Yeah. It's not that, every decision I made is, fortunate for me that I survived all those things, okay? But I think, the leader must make the call, must make the decision, right? Don't procrastinate on that. And, people will respect you for that, right? Now, some of them within the organization may not like that decision, but you put them to, make them feel easy. Look, there's a bigger picture behind this.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but, you put me in that place.
Yeah.
Right. I think, Infosys is a classic example, right? They got 8 or 9 founders, but Narayan Murthy was a guy, right? Finally say, okay, and the guys who didn't agree, they left.
Yeah.
Right? So I think, the decision making is very, very critical. And, people, once you make a call, everybody falls in place, right?
Yeah.
So we have made a lot of decisions in Tessolve where I was the only guy who felt that, I should do it when the entire company, all my management said, don't do it, including my investors. But I still did it.
Okay.
Right. In fact, one instance, the investor told me, Raja, you're holding a gun to our heads. Right. I said, look, I don't want to fire it, but, I know more about the company than you do.
True.
Okay. And so, I'll make the call. What, you tell me why, is all that. I'll listen to you, but I want to make the call. So you must be bold enough to do that and be it, accept the consequence of it as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think some boldness need to be there and belief.
Yeah.
And people respect that.
And even if people don't agree with you, my observation has been if you can explain as to why you made the decision you made, most people will understand.
Absolutely.
And then I think the objective for everyone is to fall in line, like you said, towards the mission.
Yeah. I think mostly, right? I mean, people are very logical and so forth, right? It's just that sometimes they're so logical, they want perfect answers for that, right?
Yeah.
And in the space that we are playing in the startups, or you have to just believe that something is 5-10 years from now, right?
Yeah.
This morning I was in an investor call from Hong Kong, right? Some big investors want to come into Semiconductor. We're trying to create this big fund, that even government can become an LP in that.
Right.
And so the guy was talking to and then I said, look, what do you think, right? 10 years from now, how India will look, the semiconductor, right? And he didn't. I mean, he's an investor. He's a supposedly long-term investor, but they did not have that, right? So I had to explain to them, this is what I see, right? There's going to be at least 2 companies, semiconductor companies, which will be in the top 10 in 10 years. Okay,
right?
It's going to happen. Okay. Then there's going to be at least another 10 companies which will be in the $1 billion sales, right? Each in 10 years, right? And is that going to happen? It's an aspirational thing, but I think it was going to happen, right? And this, you put all of these things together, I think it will happen. So, if they, and then, you go into a lot more details to explain why you think it is and all that. So then, then the consensus comes about, right? And some people say, look, I'm not comfortable making those calls, but you are, and, power to you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that's a good break to get into a bit of lightning round, right? So maybe it might give a sneak preview into what Raja is outside of work. Okay, so are you ready for it, Raja?
Sure, absolutely.
So the first question is, which piece of everyday Indian life would you like to be chipped? From street vendors to cricket balls, just to prove a point about innovation potential.
You know, one of the things, right? All these IPL and all this, right? There was a time when Chennai teams were, I think, it was banned or something for
Yes,
some reason.
for a year or so, yeah.
Yeah, and I make it a point to go to at least one match. Okay,
Okay.
usually Chennai. And then, even though, the matches was not going on and, Chennai was not even participating, when we saw these vendors were still selling, right? The same dates, right? Somewhere else is going on. So we were just passing by the stadium and they were selling these things, right? And there were people buying it, right? So, of course, Dhoni and all that was still buying. And I was thinking, man, that is really, hardcore belief that they can sell this, right? And, some 20, 30 rupees or whatever, right? So I think, I mean, to some extent, I think, Indians I don't know whether it's because of the movies or Hollywood or whatever, right? We live in fantasy land for a while, right? And I think it's a good thing in my opinion. Right?
Yeah.
It makes us lighter.
Yes.
Indians are in general very happy, even though they may not have too many things, much, but we're happy people in this sense, right? Yeah. So that's something that, I really enjoy when I'm walking around, seeing people. They don't have much, but they're happy.
Very nice. Very nice. So what's the most unusual analogy you have ever used to explain a semiconductor concept to someone?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, like my mother, okay, one of the reasons just now you brought up, why I'm a first-time graduate in my family, right? So we don't have that background, right? So my mother was, probably, I really don't know, but probably she fifth standard or something in there, right? And so when I got this, ECE and so on, right? So I'm trying to explain to her, right, what I do, right? And she's very, difficult for her to figure out, right? And I don't want to say electrical. So I said, hey, see the plane going up there, right? And somebody is talking to the plane, right? That's what I do. Right? Electronics and, RF, I couldn't explain to her. I said, somebody is talking to that plane, right? Yeah. That's the kind of work that, I want to do, and this is what I'm studying for. So that electronics and communications is one of the things that I explain.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So complete this sentence. The strangest place I have ever found inspiration for a semiconductor idea was...
Strangest place. I don't know whether it's the strangest place, but sometimes when I go into these museums, right, and my wife is also a history graduate. I like museums. I'm a big believer in history.
Yes.
Right, that somebody has done it, and how you progress into it. So I've seen, some of those ideas that has happened, many years ago, with very little knowledge about a lot of these things, and that I find it very, inspirational, right? I mean, with nothing, right? Or how did they manage to figure this out, right? Whether it's astronomy or wherever it is, right? And so, okay, I think one maybe incident is, and I'm very fascinated by planes, for example, right? Such a huge, right?
Yeah.
How many tons, right?
Yes.
How can they fly like that, right?
Yeah.
And this always fascinates me, right? So everything about this, flying and all of these things, always is a huge inspiration for me, right? And saying that, look, people can lift this thing, right? And and flying nonstop for that's a marvel, right?
True.
So I all these kind of things really inspires me.
Yeah.
And I'm also a big believer that technology has a solution to everything, right? It's only a question of whether we accept it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Super. So you have to explain what you do at IVP to a 5-year-old using only kitchen analogies. How will you do that?
Yeah, I have a 5-year-old grandson.
Oh, yeah.
I have three. I have 3 grandkids, but the youngest one is 5.
Okay.
So it kind of matches that. I would say, he actually asks me quite sometimes. So I'll say, okay, take this microwave, okay? He knows that, to heat up something, right? You got to put it in the stove or, there's a fire and so on, right? But here, take this milk, I'll put in there, right? And after 1 minute, it becomes hot. Okay? So what is that microwave? It's doing something magic over there, right? So there's no fire, right? There's no heat. How is it that, it's so that's kind of what, Aya does. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Nice. Nice. Okay. So last question. You get 1-minute phone call from Elon Musk about India's chip strategy, but he's only interested in your wildest idea. How will you pitch it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I was in Doha a couple of days ago.
Okay.
And I saw this huge infrastructure, right? Malls and highways and all the beautiful, right? Huge, right? But there's no people. Okay, you couldn't find people in the streets, even in the mall, right? It was very sparse. And here, it's just the opposite, right? And the people always walking somewhere, right? It's congested, streets and everything, right? So I would say, hey, instead of making cars move and so on, why not we make the roads move, right? Instead of, having trains, now, so let's say, for example, a 5-kilometer radius area, right? You pick that and you build something that you can hop on, hop off. So the rails will move, right? And so, you can either walk on it or you just stand there, right? And you'll get to your place, right? So every 5 kilometers, right? Let's say, in a densely populated place, and we have very densely populated areas, right? You could do that. You remove, the thought is the reverse, right? You don't build more cars or more trains or more this and that, right? You make the infrastructure move, right? Rather than the thinking now. That's a Elon idea in my
Who knows? You might end up pitching to him at some stage. Nice. Great set of answers, Raja. So let me shift back to where we left off, right? And you touched briefly on some of your earlier answers is in terms of people building or the largest technology companies in semiconductors building for the affluent, which is the top 10%. And there is an opportunity in India to build for the masses to solve problems which are very real. And you mentioned some of them. And what do you believe are those opportunity areas that startup founders in chips and semiconductors in India can take advantage of?
Yeah. So, I think one is, fundamentally, right, if you're just looking to make margins and, things like that, there's the Western formula, right? But if you're trying to solve real problems, right? For example, right, we're the whole world is getting hotter, right? Getting hotter, warmer. The peaks are, pretty high. The consumption of air conditioning in India is going to go through the roof, right? Every summer there's a shortage of air conditioning, right? You can't even buy if you want to, right? So now the West, there's a solution, right? But there are better solutions, right? They're not just science projects, right? They've already graduated into actual stuff, right?
So you can do commercial.
You can do commercial, which can reduce by 30 to 40% of the consumption, electric consumption, right? Okay. The number of work, So there are a lot of solutions like that, right? You use DC motors, the AC versus DC, right? You must have heard of Current Wars.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's a fantastic movie that I would encourage every.
Which one?
Current Wars.
Current Wars. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought of it something else. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good movie. It's about between Westinghouse and Edison.
I've
fight
not
between them,
okay.
and Tesla is there in between.
Okay.
It's a fantastic movie. why AC took over DC, right? Even though DC is more efficient, right? There's a lot of politics in there too, right?
I understand.
It's always about politics.
Yeah.
So I think, there's a lot more solutions that, one is, in the power. I'm a big believer that you give me power and I can change the world, right? Because once you have power, right? I mean, literally power.
Correct.
You can create so many things.
Yeah.
Right. So assume if you get free power, right? Imagine what all you could do with it, right?
True.
So my thinking is, this is the way we produce power in this, mega, the giga stations and all that, and then you transmit. Like my village is about 280 kilometers from Tirunelveli power plant. We get to my village 280 kilometers.
Yeah.
Right. And my village probably uses, I don't know, entire village uses maybe 50 kilowatts or something.
Right.
And, so you transmit all of this, right? Imagine, if just about 20, 30 villages around it, maybe 1 megawatt is more than sufficient. We have a small power plant, solar with some batteries and all that, right? It will solve the problem, right? All these transmission problems. So I think there's a lot of solutions, power related. And once you have the power, right, that will, give you more opportunities to create good water source,
right,
and so on, right?
Yeah. Even with the climate, it could be huge impact.
Yeah, even climate changes, help in agriculture, so localizing, right?
Yeah.
Localizing, right?
Making communities self-sustained. Yeah. Great thought. And power makes me ask you another question. And in fact, today morning I was reading about how scarce power has become with AI data centers coming up in US. And no question, it'll expand to every part of the world. So how do you see AI and electrification in the lines of what India should or should not do? And what could be the opportunities that it presents in terms of next wave of semiconductors?
Yeah. I don't know too much about AI, to be frank with you, right? But I'll tell you, see, I mean, you're with Intel, so whenever you have a project, right? There is in every project, right? We are given a power budget, right?
Yes.
The chip has to work within the power budget.
Yeah.
But looks like for this AI, that's out the door, right? You need a nuclear power plant apparently to run your chip.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a given. I mean, people are selling this, right? I mean, can you imagine, right?
Yeah.
Those days, right? If it's 1 watt, it should be 1 watt. If it's 1.1 watt, it won't make the tape out, right?
Yeah.
So I think, this solution, right? Again, right? I think there's a whole mafia behind this, right? You have to create, energy, and the oil companies want to sell more oil, and all this kind of thing.
Natural gas has
become all of this, right? So, power hungry solutions has become a solution, and then all the other climate warming things and all that has actually taken a backseat, right? As you can see the last few years, right?
Yeah.
So I think for India, I think we should come up with our own solutions, right? A lot more distributed way of doing things. Do we need this, huge, data centers and so on? And I'm not a very, I don't know between inference versus
training
and all those kind of things, right? But I believe that, we have a lot of data that, we certainly do. We should come up with our own philosophy, how we process it, how we, use it. I think Western data, a lot of it will be used for marketing and sales and how people think and so forth, right?
Social media,
right? Yeah. Do we need a game for every person in the world? So I think we have different problems and different solutions to go after.
Yeah.
The quality of life, and so. I think it should be a lot more distributed. I'm not a big believer at all, in building these mega or giga, centers. We should not get carried away with that. Give us time. Like, I always say, right, if you give a problem to NVIDIA and you give the same problem to a startup in India, right? NVIDIA will come up with a fantastic solution, 100% solving the problem. But it'll be a very, very expensive solution, right? It cannot be a cheap solution because it goes against them, right?
Right.
The same guys here, right, may not have a 100% solution, maybe 90% solution, but it'll be a more practical solution, right? Because, that's how they are trained, and how they try to solve the problem rather than. In fact, NVIDIA probably has better solutions already, but they probably don't want to introduce it to the market. Why would they, right? When you can make $20,000 or $40,000 on a chip, right? Why would I introduce a say analog front end compute, analog based computing, we have some guys doing it. So I think from a solution standpoint, I think our AI should look different, solving different issues, and should be a lot more distributed.
It's a very contrarian thought, and I agree with you that we have to come out with solutions which are very unique to our needs, because our needs are unique.
Yes.
It's not as any other country. Yeah, agree. You started IVP at 68, which is beyond incredible. So what made you do that? And what is the vision for IVP?
So IVP is focus on power, as I said, right? I'm a big believer in power.
Yes.
Once you have give power to everybody, right? Then the magic will happen, in my opinion. I enjoy what I do.
It clearly shows.
Yeah, and people say I look young for my age. So I always tell my age so that people say, "Oh my God,"
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that. And I think I keep myself young because I deal with young people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a very good experience for me in Tessolve. Okay. Most of my people, I think 90th percentile at one point was 26 or 27.
It's amazing.
The early years, right? 90th percentile.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all from small towns.
All from small towns. Mostly. I kind of force it, right? My managers will say, "Oh, sir, they don't speak, then, we have problem, because all my customers were, American customers."
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say, you give them a chance, man, 6 months, 9 months, they will be so loyal to you. Right?
Yeah.
And they're bright, right? They just, maybe they're not able to speak well, and it's not a city boys.
But they have so much hunger.
So much hunger, right? Yeah. And I'll tell you, so many stories, right? But, one of the things that, the whole family, their family will be involved, right? We used to have family days where I encourage them to bring their parents.
Yeah.
They're not married, they want to bring their spouse is fine, but, bring your parents, right? I insist, bring your parents. And so many of them, right? Because they're the first graduates again, right? This kids, right?
Yes.
They would have sold everything, including their jewelry, everything to go put them through school and all that. So now they have a job. They come and see this nice office that the kid is working. And it was so exciting, right? And now, if they want to leave Tessolve, the parents will not allow them to do it. Okay? They say, first they'll say, "Oh no, Mr. Raja has given you this opportunity. Why you, be, loyalty, all this kind of things, right?" A lot of them got married to, because they had a good job. So it was a whole, family kind of, so I work with a lot of young people. I feel younger,
So true.
And I've seen, people who, associate with the older people.
Yeah.
They get older much faster. And my wife is also, is part of this, right? She always says, "Why are you dressing like an old man?" She wants to dress me up, okay?
Yeah.
So she wants me to wear some, nice clothes and all that, look younger. And, and if I walk a little bit, she said, "Why are you walking like an old man?" So there's always that thing about, wanting
that
push to nudge and say, "Hey, you're part of this," right? And I want to stay healthy. I run and do things like that to stay healthy so I can play with my grandkids.
Yeah.
So I think all of those, right, just the pleasure of working with people and technology, as you know, right, is always intriguing.
Yeah. Very, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything you said is a summary of the entrepreneurial impact in society, right? Employment, and you can dig deep into the country and source or hire people who would not have been given a chance, right? So it's amazing, incredible impact you're
And
making.
I always feel that, the MSMEs, right?
Right.
Small, medium companies are where the innovation is happening, okay? Will happen, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not ROI, IRR companies, right?
Yeah.
They just want to make a living, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is the number of jobs creation is, for the investment is much higher in MSMEs, right? So I also promote this with the government, right? Fund small startups that will actually, let's say, for example, build equipment.
Yeah.
Right. Equipment, for semiconductor, the big guys are basically integrators.
Correct.
So there's a lot of, Applied probably works with 10,000 suppliers, right? Everybody's small, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think, the need of the country is, right? And we are very innovating people. I mean, you look at Coimbatore, right?
Yeah.
Where it's at Tamil Nadu government setting up a park over there,
Mm-hmm.
equipment park.
Yeah.
Because of, the talent there, right?
Correct.
Pune would be another, good
Correct.
choice.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. In fact, you and I have been in Malaysia, and I'm sure you saw the same thing I saw, how chip and semiconductor industry transformed the country in terms of supply chain, and the number of suppliers that came about in Penang and the adjoining areas is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and it still hasn't stopped growing.
Yeah.
They probably about 55 years now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, they just keep growing and more innovations happening. And
Correct.
the whole place has been uplifted.
Yeah, lifted. Yeah.
I remember, when I was in Fairchild, the first trip to Penang, right? So I was, of course, I'm from Asia, so I know that. But I had to bring some of my guys to go to Penang, some white guys. And they were like, oh, Malaysia, right? We need to get all these shots and all that. Yeah, I heard, there's a monkeys, comes into the house and all those things. And I said, oh man, where are you guys living? You go to Penang, I mean, this is so modern now. This is, of course, I'm talking about 80s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how things have transformed.
True. So, switching gears, a little bit on ecosystem, right? So you have been in the chip industry for a very long time, and contributed significantly to it as well. A lot of it you talked about, and you have seen us as a country take swings at it more than once. Where do you see India stand today, and what do you think public policy makers could do the most to really make sure that this swing we really succeed?
Yeah, I really do believe. If maybe 3 years ago, if you asked me this question, then I said not in my lifetime.
Right.
But I think a lot of things have happened on the ground, and also political, geopolitical. All those things are kind of enhancing my belief, and also the things that are happening on the ground. I think from a policy or from the government, right? They're funding a lot of these big companies, subsidies and so forth, right? But I believe that in this semiconductor specifically, it is built by passionate people, smart, I mean, look at Broadcom, Qualcomm, Intel, anybody, right? All, they were not built by big companies, right? Nobody gave, big companies money and said, hey, go and do some chip, right? They could have, right?
Yeah.
But it's never been historically, right? Everywhere, right?
Yes.
So it's always been, from the ground swell, and then you get these geniuses, I call them, right? Who do this out of passion more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
So I think, we need to focus on that a lot more. Take a bet on these guys, right? And, fund the hell out, right? Maybe, initial days, right? You give them certain amount of funding and see, right? So let us say, give 100 companies, right? And then you kind of say, okay, this 10 guys, we should give them all out, right? Give them 1,000 crores, right? To build the next thing, whatever, right? Don't give them 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs or something, right? So I think, that kind of approach where you're actually taking bets on these passionate people, right, rather than the big corporates, right? They will do their thing, right? They will come in later, okay? So I would say, rather than funding a lot of these, type of companies, because they will eventually become followers rather than leaders. If we want to be leaders, right? These geniuses who are, scrapping around, in the periphery are the ones who are going to be leaders, right?
Yeah.
If we want to take leadership, if we just want to be, Me Too kind of a country, right? Then, give money to corporates and my fear is only with all this funding and all that is going on, right? We're talking about 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crores in the next few years. What would we see in 10 years from now? Are we creating manufacturing centers, service centers for the foreign companies to come and use them and take benefit out of it? Or are we going to have our own companies, proud Indian companies?
Like you said, solving Indian problems.
Yes. Solving Indian problems is actually solving global problems.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, there's a deep thinking we need to do now that now we've actually started rolling out.
Yeah.
Where do we emphasize, right?
Yeah.
And I think, private sector has to step up big time. Today is still a very government initiative.
Yeah. And why do you think that is the case? I mean, I've seen more and more people talk about it. The government R&D spend is more than the private sector, which in India, which is very surprising. And secondly, even in semiconductor, I completely agree with you that there is a lot more happening on the government side than private sector side. Why do you think that is the case, and what could be changed? What could entities like NASSCOM play as a contributor to the cause?
I think, see, this NASSCOM and ISA and all these, right? They are very powerful organization in that sense, right? I mean, they've made a name for themselves, and they're the memberships, right? If you put all maybe the 20 NASSCOM members, right? They probably, their sales is more than $200 billion or something.
True.
Right? Combined, right? Or even more, right? So I think they have a huge influence on, how they look at it. And I always tell these guys, right? NASSCOM is supposed to be software folks. Now, you look at it, right? Hardware, software, there is a link and, it's good business for them as well, right? So instead of telling the government to put more money or telling the government what to do, I would think that, NASSCOM can do something, right? They say, okay, we'll create $1 billion fund, right? 20 guys, each of you put like $50 million, which is within their reach, right?
Right.
You create $1 billion fund and then, look at some hyperscalers that you want to make, which is going to help all your, NASSCOM folks, right? So things like that are very forward, thinking, and if you don't want to do R&D on your own, right?
Yeah.
So things like that that they could do. Again, right? Private sector needs to set up through and granted that it's hard to understand semiconductor business, and most of the founders are in a way, right, nerds, and they like what they do.
Yeah.
But it's for an investor to look at it and say, can these guys actually build product and sell product, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because selling in product is different from, building the product, right? As you know, right?
Yeah.
They believe that these guys are good designers. But then, now they have to touch, I always say, right, to make a chip, you probably have to touch 20 companies.
Yeah.
It's not like a software, right? You control everything, right? So these guys, right, are they capable of doing this, right? Dealing with the Chinese culture, Taiwanese culture, Japanese culture, equipment, and all that. So I think, the trust level is very low. Yeah. But I have a counter offer, right? What I'm telling them is, look, these are the geniuses, right? You are big corporate. You know how to sell. You know how to, take it to market and all that. You do it all the time, right? So you adopt these guys, right?
Interesting.
Right? You adopt these guys, right? And help them out. Maybe end of the month they can't make payroll. Okay, you pay, 1 crore, 2 crores. There's nothing in your thing, right? And you take them, right? I have an example, right? Let's say, TVS Motors, right? Go. Venu Srinivas. He's a very, very influential person. Right? If he picks up the phone,
Yeah.
And he calls, some automotive company and says, hey, I have this, I've adopted this startup,
Yeah.
can you give them a chance, take a look at their product? It's,
Of course. Yeah.
they will get the mind share.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And all that he has to do is, make a call. Right.
Yeah.
So I think, they're not connected yet.
Mm.
Sometimes I see these, pictures, like Semicon, right? Prime Minister is there. And, they've got all these people surrounding him, this photo op, right? And I said, what's wrong with this picture? Where is the startup guy there? Right? There's the AMD, there's Intel, there's Applied, there's Lam, there's all these guys. But then there's no startup guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So although we talk about all this,
Yeah.
startup, and all that, but it doesn't match.
Yeah.
Right? And that poor guy, is because Prime Minister is there, he can't even get into the arena.
Yeah.
So I think, there is a balance, right?
A balance that is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very well said. Yeah. So if you have worked in Valley, you worked in India as well. You talked a lot about what is needed for Indian ecosystem. So if you were to transport one aspect from the Valley to this place, which makes it better, what would that be? And what is the one thing you will leave?
I think, the ecosystem, right? Tessolve was trying to do one of the ecosystem, right? Why, people believe that they can do certain things, right? Because the ecosystem allows you, right? I mean, take chip manufacturing. I mean, in the Valley, right? You have guy who will just do the deposition for you, right? You can take your wafer, send it to him. He just do the, send it back to you. And another guy will just do the packaging for you or something, right? So you can even actually split the entire fab process into, there's so many little companies that are
so hyper specialized.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah. So let's say, right, I know how to run a litho, for example. I'm a litho engineer.
Right.
You set up a small litho shop, right? And, so again, right, my way of thinking is, whatever you do best, right? You do that and, you can offer that as a service, right? Tessolve was part of that, right?
Yeah.
We wanted to create for local companies, but there were no local companies at that time. So we ended up the usual servicing, the big multinationals, right? So I think that's one thing that I would strongly, strongly recommend. And these people are the people, one of the issues they don't have capital. So if the government or, anybody, right, banks and so forth, help in the capital, right? You give them a loan, right? You don't even need to, with maybe interest taken up by the government, right?
Yeah. Reduced interest or low interest.
No, let the government pay the interest, right? I'm saying don't even need to give grants, right?
Right.
You be the collateral for the bank. Yeah. The government can be the collateral or some private organization. And then, they pick up the interest, right? So to encourage this. So I think one is, the ecosystem build up.
Yeah.
I think, you'll do. What I would not do is, at least lately, right? Seems like, the amount of funding that is going into, these crazy valuations that are going in. And then what has happened is, the expectation of the startup people also has gone up, right? Initially, right, we'll work for, 1/5 our salary, right? In the garage or somewhere, right? Which was now it's not, right?
250 million.
Yeah. So now if I want to hire a staff, for my startup, right? A good, let's say, power system architect or something, right? It's going to cost me 1 crore or something, right?
Wow.
So I think, this Silicon Valley, you want to be a startup, but also, you want a corporate thing, right? So, your payback, has to happen later on. And I think, that's how, you actually, I always feel that, the moment you start earning this ridiculous, money and so on, your focus is no more in
running
the thing, right? So, so that's something that I will leave out in that sense.
Well said. Yeah. So in an Indian environment, given all the challenges you have faced and the current founders will also face, what would be your advice to a startup founder wanting to raise money?
See, what you do well you can always pitch it, and you can really defend it, right? You can say that. But I think there are many things that in order to build a product company, you need that which you don't have, right? So how do you fill the gap, right? First of all, you need to understand that, right? You need to have the maturity to understand that, hey, it needs a team to build this, right? And you can't just do it by yourself. And then the other thing is, they've somebody was, I was just talking to a startup, is making a chip for automotive, right? Because everybody is automotive, right? We want to get into automotive. And I said, okay, fine, automotive is the flavor now, looks like. Okay, it takes 3 years for you to get, even if you have the chip ready today, right? It will take 3 years for you to get qualified and go through, right? And those big boys in that automotive, right, whether it's NXP or Infineon and all these guys, they're not going to stand by and wait for you to come in, right?
Yeah.
So think about all that, right? So don't get too much carried away. What is the flavor and so on, but think about practically what you can do, and we got to also understand that, look, we are not going to create some earth-shattering new design coming out of India. Let's be very frank, right? Right.
Be pragmatic.
We be pragmatic, and we're going to create something you already know, right? You've come out of Qualcomm or Intel or NXP or so, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what you know, right? So you're not going to, create something, and because our system doesn't also allow you. See, NVIDIA, right? He didn't know he was going to do what,
Agreed.
Jensen will tell you that.
After 30 years, they figured.
Yeah. And it was the right time, right place, right? I mean, the GPU was dying, right?
Yes.
And then, found this AI thing, and say, oh, we need a lot of computing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, So I think, most of the startup guys bang on what they can do, but what they cannot do, is where, the realization happens. And then, you bring the right people or right consulting or the right funding, in order to fill that gap.
Okay. And to that end, given that you have seen it from so many different vantage points, what is the one thing about semiconductor industry that frustrates you the most that you would advise a startup founder or an innovator on?
I think the biggest challenge I see is, in manufacturing, for a startup, right? The moment you tape out, right, it goes into a black box, right? You don't know what is happening there. You don't understand pricing. You don't understand what you could do, right? Maybe you could tweak a particular process and make your product better. So, it's very frustrating in that sense, right? You could have the best design, but then you could never get it out.
Right.
So I think, if there is something that, whether it's a government or on the influence of this big industrial people, to give you a hand in managing that, or, even today, right, there's the Hong Kong investor. He said, oh, India is going to be a powerhouse. It's going to be a semiconductor powerhouse. We all know that. I mean, this is, Hong Kong guy saying it, right? So I think that belief, right? And so you project bigger than you are, okay? Tessolve, right? When we were in the early stages, right? I know what we were doing in terms of, sales and not being able to meet even payroll, okay? But the outside world,
right,
including ISC and all that, they was like, oh my God, these guys are doing 1,000 crores, and this and that, right? I mean, I'm talking about, 10, 15 years ago, okay? So we managed to create this, right? I mean, we didn't actually do it, but somehow, it came out that way. So I think, the belief that, you could be, right?
It's that confidence.
The confidence that, hey, so what, I think that it goes to the next level, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our founders are, it's like, maybe it's part of our culture, right?
A little timid.
Timid, yeah.
And
you look at, founders in the US.
Yeah, very aggressive.
Like there's no tomorrow, right? Yeah, I can do this,
Yeah. Well, some element of fake it till you make it. as they say. Yeah. Yeah. So we come a long way, Raja. So I have a final question that I ask all my guests, which is this, that India's path towards semiconductors and deep tech is not only about domestic growth. It's our place in the world when it comes to technology. So if you look out 10, 15, 20 years, what do you believe is India's vision at that time or execution at that time? And what needs to happen today to make that vision a reality?
Yeah, great question. See, the semiconductor market is supposed to be a $1 trillion market, right? So basically doubling in the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? We all believe that,
yeah,
right? Because of the usage of semiconductor and so on. Now, so what has happened in the last 60 odd years, right? We're trying to squeeze it in the 10 years, right? So how are we going to make that happen? It cannot happen without India or Indians, okay? Because, the size, you're trying to, where is the talent going to come from, right? Where is the resource, right? Where is the market and so on. So I think, India has got to, as much as India wants to get into semiconductor, I think semiconductor needs India even more, right?
Yeah.
In order to reach this. So I'm a firm believer that, we'll have a seat at the table regardless, okay? Now, can we take a leadership position? Can we set standards? Can we, deal, in the forefront of this? I think, just like if you look at, Reliance Jio or something, right? You didn't hear about it, 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? Today they're number one, right?
Yeah.
So I think, there are opportunities like that. I think, we will create certain companies or, certain solutions. And when I say semiconductor, I'm not restricted to, just a chip. It could be a subsystem, could be modules.
Yeah.
So solutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, we will provide, entire solutions and so on, I think, to go. Where I think, government can help is with all the use cases, all right?
Right.
Fund the use cases,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that, that gets proven.
There is demand.
There's demand. It's proven, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I got to prove it.
Yeah.
The one I told you about the air conditioning, right?
Yeah.
I have the air conditioning.
Yeah.
I have 1 ton, 1.5 ton air conditioner, which can give you 30, 40% lower consumption.
Yeah.
I have it.
Okay.
Right? But it's got, of course, the incumbents don't want it, right?
That's true.
Right? If they can sell something, and for a much higher price, why would they want to do?
Why would they?
So now, government could be a good case, use case, right? Okay. The secretariat in Tamil Nadu has probably, 200, 300 aircon, 1.5 tons sitting everywhere, right? Let's say you give me, and I can show, right?
The comparison,
right? So I think, government can help a lot of the use cases, give them, opportunity there, fund some of the use cases, publish it, certify it.
Yeah.
So look, just like China, right? There's always a China standard, right? So why not, right? Create those kind of standards and certification and all that. So the use cases is very important.
Yeah.
And we have use cases,
mm-hmm.
right? Because of the population we have in all this. My sister is a doctor.
Right.
Right. And, Indian doctors who studied here and practiced here and they went to the US and all that. One of the big difference they have is, they used to see, my sister probably saw like 70, 80 cases a day. Right. Whereas you see like 5, you'll be lucky if you see 5 there. Right.
Yeah.
So, now we talk about AI and, training and inference. We already had that.
Yeah.
By default.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Our training was, training cases, we had, thousands with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think, India has all the chaos that we have.
Yeah.
So I think, government, helping them, in these situations, right?
Yeah. In the initial phase.
Leadership.
Yeah. Fantastic. So is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we didn't cover?
My message is this, right? We have geniuses in our society, right? They are the future, right? Just like diamond in the rough, they're everywhere. You can't see it. Adopt them, find them, right? Put some, money behind them, coach them, just like if you would do your own kid. If your kid wants to be, good in basketball, you would put all the money, or a violinist, right? You send him to all the violin schools and this and that,
Yeah.
right? We have a lot of these geniuses that are in our midst. Whether it's in school, high school, or in institutions, maybe every graduating class, right? You pick two who are thinkers, and not just academically, right?
Yeah.
Things like that, and then get the industry to adopt them and build them out. And even in industries, right? We find some of them are exceptional, right? Create some opportunities for them because they are our future.
Yeah.
Right. If we don't believe in them, and then how will we?
Nothing really happens without.
Yeah. I mean, imagine, right? If these geniuses are in the US or Germany or somewhere, right? They'll be instantly recognized, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So to me, the startups are the geniuses.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's a great place to close it. Thank you, Raja.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
It's been a pleasure. Been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate you coming over. And for our audience, please follow us. Please subscribe to our channel. The sessions that we do is based for you to provide us feedback on what kind of innovators, what kind of startup founders, what kind of conversations you would like to see or hear or listen to. So thank you very much for your time, and see you next time.